Hello again, welcome back to the Mirror Football Podcast. The Mirror's chief sports writer Oliver Holtz around the table with me, along with the 3pm editor Steve Anglesey and the Mirror Football deputy editor Ian Cruz. And there's just one subject to discuss today. Liverpool, 10 defeats in their last 20 matches, out of the title race, out of the Champions League, out of the Carling Cup, and now out of the FA Cup courtesy of Championship Reading. And yet Liverpool still can't sack Rafa Benitez because it would cost too much. So Ollie, where do we go from here in terms of Liverpool?
Well, I think Liverpool face a long, hard second half of the season now, which is going to be dominated by their attempt to force their way back into the Champions League and Champions League spots at the top of the table. They're going to have to try and get back into the top four. They've got the Europa League, which is a Mickey Mouse competition that nobody cares about. That's just a distraction. Their main focus is getting back into the top four. Now, obviously, whether they do that with Benitez or not is at the helm is the big question. I think they should stick with him. I'm a Benitez fan. I know it's not particularly fashionable at the moment, but I haven't forgotten what he's achieved for them. I think they're having a bad season, and it is going to go down as a bad season whatever they do now, really, because I think the most they can hope for is to get into the top four. But I think every leading manager who has had the kind of success that he has deserves to be able to see out a bad season. If next season doesn't start well, then that's a different matter.
I was actually just going to go to the chats, but I was going to press you for a sec because you were saying you're a Benitez fan. Plays one up front against two defensive midfielders against Portsmouth and loses. He often plays one up front against teams you would expect him to beat. Doesn't play what people say the Liverpool way. Bad transfer policy. How can you be a Liverpool a Rafa Benitez fan?
Well, because the small matter of the fact that he did win the Champions League for them in his first season. He'd taken them to a Champions League final as well. He's got a better record in the Champions League recently than any other manager except Sir Alex Ferguson, any other in terms of British clubs. Look, he's made some mistakes, and I think he's made some poor signings, and in particular the fact that he let Xabi Alonso go, or certainly managed him so poorly that it came to a point where he had to let Alonso go. I think that was a big mistake, but I think that a lot of managers make mistakes and come back for them. You know, I mean, Manchester United were knocked out of the Champions League at the group stage, I think, in 2003. They didn't sack Sir Alex Ferguson. I think the lessons of the really successful teams in the Premier League are that the ones that are successful are the ones who stick with their managers, if they find a good one, and I think Benitez is a good one.
Ian, are you a Rafa Benitez fan?
Well, I agree with what Ollie's saying in many respects. I mean, I was talking to a couple of people earlier on. I mean, he has had success. He did win the Champions League in his first season, but you kind of wonder how much of that was down to Steve and Joe. I mean, they were 3-0 down at half-time, an extraordinary comeback, obviously, but they were still fortunate to win that game. They were fortunate to win the FA Cup final the following season when only a last-minute goal forced extra time against West Ham. So you could argue, is he a good manager? Is he a lucky manager? It's not only a question.
Do you get fortunate like every year? Were they fortunate to get to the Champions League final the next year? You know, I mean, the guy's been a pretty fortunate guy.
Yeah, no doubt. They say you make your own luck, don't you? I mean, he's obviously the way he plays, the way he sets them up, seems to be more suited for European football than the Premier League. People have been saying that for a number of seasons now. The question about whether I'm a fan or not, the difficulty for Liverpool is, one, we understand if they want to be rid of him, it's going to cost them 20 million or somewhere in that region. And two, if they got rid of him now, or even in the summer, where do they then go? You know, my understanding from speaking to people on Merseyside is Liverpool think he's one of the top half dozen managers in the world. So if you get rid of the one who you may think is sixth in the world, you've got to get one of the top five, and those guys aren't available. So it's not the big question. Not so Rafa Benitez's transfer policy has been questioned. On the pitch, they're poor. Torres and Joe aside. Off the pitch, all the instability with the American owners. We've had Tom Hicks Jr. and his emailing this week. The whole thing is something of a shambles at the moment, and that's not the Liverpool way, is it?
There just comes a point, Steve, where you have to stop blaming the boardroom upheaval and start looking at your own performance on the pitch, surely.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that there's a good lesson in the way that Alex Ferguson has handled the fact that he's plainly got no money, and the money is leaching out of the club and to service the Glazers' debts. and he has constantly said, "No, I've got money. I'm just choosing not to spend it." And that looks like a little bit of kidology. And then across the M62, you've got a guy who rolls his eyes every time the American owners are mentioned. I've always thought it would, because of the strong support that he's got within the city and among Liverpool fans in the city, that it was unthinkable that he would be forced out and the Americans would go. But after watching them play against Reading, I can't remember a Liverpool side playing as badly. I don't think they've played as badly in any of the Premier League defeats. They've certainly been unlucky with injuries, but the team that finished that game on Wednesday night was absolutely dreadful, and apart from Jamie Carragher, I think he'd bought all of them.
Does it look to you, Steve, that the players have stopped playing for him then? Sorry to do your job there, Darren, slightly, but do you think that's the case then, Steve? The players are thinking, actually, we've had enough now and we can engineer a change here? I'm
never ever convinced that ever happens, but they did look completely... Some of them looked tired. Benayoun looked injured. Obviously, Torres and Gerrard were injured. But they looked completely they looked totally disinterested in even sticking the foot out to make a challenge, which is a shocking indictment either of them or of something that's going on there.
Actually, just brings a question forward that I was going to ask a bit later, because they go to Stoke at the weekend, and Stoke are a team that you don't want to go to if you're not 150% up for the fight. Can you see them winning that game?
Well, I can see them winning it, but I think it depends a little bit on whether Gerrard and Torres are fit, which they probably won't be, and I accept totally that is the fact of me saying that as an indictment of Benitez, that we're still in a situation where Liverpool are over-reliant on one or two players. It used to be Gerrard alone, now at least he has Torres, but if those two aren't playing, there still seems to be a psychological weakness there, apart from a kind of talent weakness as well in the Liverpool side. So I do accept that, and I accept that, to say Benitez, some of his signings have not been good. You look at the amount of money they spent on Babel, for instance. Aquilani, it's unfair to say that he will always be a failure, but he has been a bad signing so far, because he was signed as a replacement effectively for Alonso, and he didn't play until pretty much until Liverpool were already out of the Champions League. So in terms of his impact this season, he's already been a failure, sadly. It's not entirely his fault. But we don't know yet whether he's going to be a success. He certainly didn't play well against Reading last night. He played poorly when I saw Liverpool play at Aston Villa. But I mean, Liverpool beat Villa. I don't see any reason why they can't beat Stoke, but I mean, it's going to be crucial few weeks for them now, because if the big thing for them now, the only thing that will rescue their season even to a small degree, is qualifying in the top four. If they don't do that, then we're really getting into they're going to be serious issues for Benitez.
Aquilani is obviously a good talking point. Comes reasonably highly rated for Italian football, but very much injury prone. Benitez made a big thing over the past 12, 18, probably 24 months of wanting total control of transfer policy at the club. That was why he had problems with Rick Parry. So he got that in the summer, didn't have a great deal of money to spend, had to get a replacement for Xabi Alonso. Ollie's already mentioned the fact that whole situation was handled badly. And he went out and spent pretty much his whole budget on a man he knew wouldn't be able to play until October at the earliest. And with his history, possibly longer than that. He's obviously not fully fit. That was a gamble that was backfired. You talk about them going to Stoke on Saturday. It's going to be freezing cold at Britannia Stadium. The wind whistles in from all sides on the top of that hill. Alberto Aquilani is not the man for that fight, is he? So if they're missing Gerrard and Torres from that game, as we expect they will be, I wouldn't put a pound on them winning that game.
See, the thing with that Villa game and the other half decent results they've had in the league recently is that they didn't really play well against Villa, did they? But the thing that you said about them was at least they're showing a bit of heart, and at least they've got a bit of bottle about them, and that was completely absent against Reading.
6 defeats in their last 20 matches. which is unheard of for a Liverpool side.
10 defeats in the last 20 matches,
Well,
and six wins, isn't it? Six wins and four
in the
draws.
last 20 matches.
I mean, I spoke to another Premier League manager the other day who said he thought that that Villa and Spurs were both ahead of Liverpool in the race for the Champions League spots. And I know they're physically ahead of them at the moment, but just in terms of their quality. And this manager took particular solace from the fact of Liverpool's midfield just being very weak. And I think clearly that the combination of Mascherano and Lucas hasn't really worked. And obviously now they've tried to draft in Aquilani, as you say, and I don't think he's fully fit, at the moment. And I feel a bit for him because you're absolutely right. He's kind of. I feel that we've all built him up a little bit we've waited for him for so long to come back that we expected him to hit the ground running. We expected him to be a fantastic player, and there's so much expectation on him. He's not fully fit yet, but that's the problem. I mean, unfortunately, the thing is, by the time he gets fully fit, Liverpool's season is effectively over.
Absolutely, and the problem for the poor fellow, you've got to feel a bit sorry for him because there is so much expectation on him now because he is being expected to be a one-man answer, a three-man answer if you include Gerrard and Torres. But that's a huge expectation to put on someone who's got to try and find his feet in the Premier League, which is vastly different to Serie A, obviously.
Well, it's the weight of expectation, isn't it?
Exactly,
as well, I think there's numerous examples of people who've been great players who've come into struggling sides, and any footballer, whether he's worth 20 million or £200,000, plays off confidence. And so that's important. That's as important as match fitness. But the weight of expectation for him. This guy he came on for 15 minutes, didn't he, in his first game and got a standing ovation. The fans there who've been so loyal to Benitez are absolutely desperate for this guy to do well. And then after the Reading game, I was listening to phone-ins and looking at the websites, and they kind of moved on now. It's like, well, Aquilani, he'll come good, but anyway, there's Maxi Rodriguez, and it's moved on, and then it'll be we'll be all right. We'll be all right when Shamak arrives.
Even if Aquilani does come good, sorry, Darren, one point. Even if Aquilani does come good, there's not enough quality around.
Correct.
The top, there's some top quality in that squad, and then there's a huge gap to the rest of them. There aren't those 3 or 4 middle ground, really good quality Premier League players to augment the superstars. There's Torres, Gerrard, Pepe Reina, and then
Mascherano.
Absolutely, he's not having the best of times. Whether he is trying to engineer a move away, we don't know. But on his day, he's proven quality, but he's not proven it.
Glenn Johnson's a good player, I think. Although he's not, he's probably not had the season that he would have hoped, and many people would have hoped. But yeah, I agree with you, and I think there's when you look at them, I think if you had the first team, a first team that had Reina, Gerrard, Torres, Mascherano, Skrtel was back,
Carragher,
a Carragher.
That's a good spine.
A Glenn Johnson back.
Yeah.
That team is probably as good, or if not better, than Spurs, than Villa. Would you agree, Ollie? Yeah.
I would. Yeah.
Than City, but I think the thing with City is that their bench and their other supporting cast is stronger than what Liverpool has. I think Tottenham's probably is as well. Villa, don't know, but I think Villa have got a better manager.
No, I think they face a real struggle, Liverpool, to get into the top four.
Let me ask you, Ollie, £100 million or whatever you say about net spends and money that Benitez has had to spend. He's been there 5 years, and yet we're still saying Torres and Gerrard. Firstly, why do they keep giving Rafa more money to spend in their transfer window, or why do they keep letting him bring more players to the club if his future is supposedly in doubt? And secondly, is Benitez a good manager of players? We've seen some good players go out of Anfield. Robbie Keane, Peter Crouch. Is he a good manager of players?
I don't think they think his position is in doubt at Liverpool, because otherwise they wouldn't have given a 5-year contract in whatever it was recently.
February last year.
So I think they've got a very good record, as we all know, backing their managers there. I also think, and you may know the stats on this, but it seems to me that Benitez, for all the money he has spent, and yet he has spent a lot, he hasn't spent as much as Sir Alex Ferguson, nor has he spent as much of Chelsea. Under Mourinho and latterly under Scolari, etc., Ancelotti. So I think, there is this idea, it's a bit like the idea with England that we expect England to win the World Cup every time they play, and that we get incredibly upset when we get knocked out in the quarterfinals, like it's our divine right that we should be in the top four, and get to the semis or the final. I mean, Liverpool, with the money they've had to spend, Benitez has got them in the top four every season he's been there. He's got to, he's won the Champions League, he's got to the Champions League finals, and he's had them in the Champions League semis. I think he's done a pretty good job. I'm not sure quite. Part of the problem with Liverpool is their former greatness, and that they're still striving to recapture that greatness. They've recaptured it in Europe now and again. And obviously there's this holy grail now of winning the league again, which they haven't been able to do. But I think that Benitez is not on a level playing field with Chelsea and Manchester United. I think he's fighting an uphill struggle there.
One thing I would say against that, and this is my own personal view, you look at Birmingham the other night. They played again. I can't remember who they played in the FA Cup the other night, but they selected the same side that had done so well.
Yeah. Forest, they beat Forest,
and they're drawn with Manchester United. They selected the same side. My big problem with Liverpool is that Rafa Benitez doesn't have enough of a consistency of tactics and team selection to win the league, and I think that's something that's frustrated a lot of people.
Yeah, Ferguson's done that. Ferguson hasn't picked the same side for 100 games now. I take your point about Birmingham. I think they've had 9 games on the spin, isn't it?
There's 11 games on.
I think he's picked the same team for 9, 10, maybe even 11.
Certainly in the Premier League, 9 on the spin, same team, which is fantastic. But I mean, Birmingham haven't got the same resources, say, as Manchester United and Liverpool. I agree with it. I find it frustrating when managers pick and when they chop and change their side, but I think that's a kind of slightly traditionalist kind of thing. And I think if they've got the resources, they feel they need to. I was watching on Sky the other day some Premier League highlights of the early days of the Premier League. So we're only talking 15, 16 years ago. The kind of difference in the pace from then and now is unbelievable. And when Kenny Dalglish was playing, the difference in the pace and the intensity, the tempo, is unbelievable. I think, we all moan about this thing of players not being able to play 50 games a season anymore, but it is a different game now. Yeah,
well, I think the criticism you levelled there, Darren, about Benitez and the rotation policy, which was obviously a stick to hit him with, certainly in the first couple of 3 years of his reign there. I think towards the end of, maybe it was last season, he realised that he needed to pick Reina, Carragher, Gerrard and Torres for every game, and he did do that. And
he still went into the season with Dirk Kuyt playing on the right when he'd been a striker in Holland. He still didn't have an orthodox right
winger.
But
when he's played up front, when he's played in the traditional striking role in the Premier League, his goals record is not great, and he does chip in from the right, and he's hugely industrious. If you're going to play Glenn Johnson as your right back, who's a very, very attacking right back, and maybe Benayoun floating on that side of the midfield as well, you need to shore that up a little bit.
Okay, why does he buy another right back when he needs another striker? You're saying that Dirk Kuyt's goals record isn't good. Why buy Glenn Johnson and sell Arbeloa to Real Madrid when you can keep Arbeloa and buy another striker?
Well, I said at the time, £17 million for Glenn Johnson, insane money as far as I'm concerned.
Good going forward, but defensively, I think all of us would agree, not as sound
as good a footballer as he is. There's not a right back in the world who's going to win you the Premier League title, whether you buy him for 17 million or 70 million. It's just not going to happen. Goal scorers and top quality goalkeepers are what win you titles. So maybe you should have taken that 17 million and the 20 million that was earmarked for Aquila. I mean, I know that the deals were done at different times, but if he had a 35 million pound war chest, he could have gone out and got David Villa for that. And that would have made a huge difference.
Just a couple of very quick points. Lots of people on the Mirror Football website turning, who, to be fair to people on the Mirror Football website, we've got Miko saying Benitez may be fighting for his job. It's a pity people let his players stop fighting for it a long time ago. And Alicia saying, I believe Rafa's time's up. It's blatantly obvious that he's lost the dressing room. Tommy B saying, I've not been alone in defending Benitez for calls from his head, but it's becoming harder and harder to justify his position. Steve, do you think he's lost the dressing room?
Well, I don't know about that. I think the most interesting thing, which I mentioned before, is the fact that there's always been this rock solid support of Rafa knows. It's almost an in Arsenal we trust situation among the people that go to the games every week and the people who live in the city. They love Rafa Benitez, and then to hear the booing at the end last night and to read that there was abuse being screamed at him from the stands. I don't know whether that's true or not, but there was. So you certainly heard those boos, and that to me is extremely telling. For a guy who does this is probably I don't know anything about the Liverpool dressing room, but for a guy, but what I do know is that, you know, he is a guy within the dressing room. He's not a touchy-feely guy, is he? He's not regarded as that. You know, Gerrard has said, when I spoke to Gerrard, that, you know, they only talk about football. He doesn't talk to him about anything else. He's very direct in you know, he's not backward in coming forward when something is wrong. I don't think he's a great one for putting the arm around the shoulder and telling you how wonderful you are, you know, and that's his style, and that really saw him through the first year, didn't it, and the incredible run, and then the second year and the subsequent success they had. But when you're looking for friends in the dressing room at a time like this, you know, Gerrard looks moody anyway, doesn't he? But he looked extra moody on the sitting there on Wednesday night, and you did begin to think, you know, is somebody going to be knocking on somebody's door? You know, are people going to come to Steven Gerrard and say, well, what do you think about this guy?
There comes a time when events on the pitch can't lie and can't disguise any number of behind the scenes rumblings. You know, it's absolutely critical for them now, as Ollie said earlier, that they finish in the top four. If they don't, then anything could happen, because if they don't finish in the top four and Manchester City or Chelsea, most likely Manchester City, I think, come in with a bid of, pick a number, 150 million for Torres and Gerrard. How could they, you know, could they turn that sort of money down? And or even if they just offer money for Torres, if Torres goes, Gerrard will look again and think, as much as I love this club is going nowhere now. And this time next year, they could be a mid-table side.
Just stay with you, Ian. When you look at the impact that Avram Grant made on Chelsea when he took over from Mourinho, or Hiddink after Scolari, same group of players managed to do much better. Do you think someone else could come in and improve that Liverpool side? And if so, who? Because you mentioned earlier about, you know, the top maybe 5 better managers. Who is out there that could improve?
Well, I mean, the Chelsea situation, a lot's been said, and particularly when Avram Grant took over, a lot has been made since that it was the players that pulled together, you know, led by John Terry, Lampard, Drogba, Ballack, that core of experienced players, and got things moving. They would say, perhaps, despite Avram Grant rather than because of him, there was a huge amount of respect for Hiddink, and he did a very good job there as a short-term appointment, and everyone knew it was a short-term appointment. Whether, you know, but is that the way forward? Do Liverpool really now want to dispense with Rafa Benitez's services and bring in a troubleshooter like Hiddink, or, you know, somebody like that for 4 or 5 months? So this is it. But then come the summer, as we said earlier, where do they go? I mean, you know, if you're talking about the top quality out there, you're talking about Fabio Capello, you're talking about Jose Mourinho, names like that.
Well, Hiddink hasn't got a job. Mark Hughes hasn't got a job. I can't ask you, Ollie, because you're a Rafa fan. So.
Well, yeah.
But, you know, Mark Hughes has just been let go from Manchester City because he's not a big enough name.
Well, and he couldn't organise a defence, which I think he's...
But he's also not a big enough name in global football to attract the players that Manchester City want. So he's not going to do the same for Liverpool. Whoever they bring in, money is tight. That person will want some, you know, a fair amount of money to start rebuilding the squad again. That, for me, is as much a problem as who's running things in the dressing room. It's you look around, you think, where's the quality in this dressing room? You know, I think you could put anyone in there and they would struggle at the minute because I don't think there's the talent in the club.
Who's going to replace Rafa Benitez if they sack him, Steve?
Well, first of all, are they going to sack him? I mean, it's.
Okay. Let me ask you this.
No.
Do they weigh up what they would lose from not being in the Champions League?
But with that
cost to
team
sack
and with the finance that they've got, are they going to finish in? Are they going to qualify for the Champions League anyway? So are they going to then, if they're going to sack him and take the 20 million hit, and then take the double hit of losing 25 million for qualifying for the group stage of the Champions League, or at least getting out of the group stage of the Champions League, or are they going to wait till the summer and try and ease him out when there's other jobs around and he could go back to Spain and probably get a nice comfy gig there? I'm sure Real Madrid will be looking for a manager as they normally are.
But you know what?
But the thing is, I hate to work for the Daily Mirror and quote the Conservative Party poster, but it is getting to a stage of we can't go on like this. And you look at those two games, Stoke game and the Tottenham game is absolutely huge now, and that's the next two games. And if they lost both of those games, he could go. You know, if they got 1 point out of those games, he could go.
Yeah.
I really don't think that they're that far away. I mean, I know we're having that. They are over-reliant on Gerrard and Torres, but when we were having that discussion before about their players, it was getting close to what have the Romans ever done for us. I mean, they're not bad. They've got a decent keeper, Reina, who's one of the best in the league. They've got Gerrard, they've got Torres, they've got a decent choice at centre-back with Skirtle, Carragher, Agger. You know, those guys are decent players. Glenn Johnson is the first-choice England right-back. They've got Benayoun, who I think we all recognise is a good player. Dirk Kuyt is a workhorse and a reliable guy. They're short of quality backup, and they're also short. Where they are desperately short, as Ian was saying, is of a David Villa to partner Torres. They have not got. If Torres is not fit, they have not got another forward, basically, which is just. You know, and again, that is a criticism of Benitez. I accept that. You know, that he has not managed that squad well, because suddenly you're into David on go or trying to push Gerrard further up than he should be, or whatever. And that is a desperate criticism. I think they make a big splash on if he has the money, they make a big splash on the centre forward. They're not a million miles away.
Jamie Carragher's come out in the wake of the Reading defeat and said that, well, first of all, apologised for the performance and said that he believes the Stoke game is massive, but they still can finish in the top four. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think the Stoke game is massive, and I think they've got a really, really tough fight on their hands, because I think Man City have got a bit of momentum now. Tottenham are a good side, Villa are a good side, and there are a lot of big games coming up for Liverpool, and a lot of those teams are playing each other in the next month. It's a huge period for all of them, but I still think Liverpool can finish in the top four. I'm not sure they will, but they need to start putting a good run of results together. But I think absolutely it's possible.
I'm worried that Liverpool's confidence is too fragile, and that if somebody's, once a team scores one past and the crowd turn on them, that could affect the very good players that you talked about. I think that could affect them. I think if City get in there in fourth, I don't think Liverpool will get back for a couple of years, because they'll only get stronger and stronger.
Well, there's part of me that still wouldn't be surprised if they finish in the top four, because there's a very well established top four in the Premier League, and you kind of expect them to always be that top four. We do forget, and we perhaps have forgotten, that the year they won the Champions League, they kind of qualified for it again the following year through the back door.
Yes.
They didn't finish in the top four. Everton finished fourth and Liverpool finished fifth. And they were given special dispensation by UEFA, who never considered that as a possibility.
They haven't got the Champions League to fall back on.
But there's not that cushion to fall back on. I mean, we've talked before.
They might have to qualify for the Europa League by
they may well.
At this rate.
This is not going to answer the question really. I'm sitting on the fence, but it wouldn't suppose they finish the top four, and it wouldn't suppose they finish eighth.
Where do you think they'll finish? Yeah.
I actually have a feeling now that with the impetus Mancini appears to have given Man City, and the fact that we all know if they decide the next fortnight that they want a couple more players, they can go and get them within reason. I could perhaps see them finishing fourth, and Liverpool maybe fifth or sixth.
Steve?
I don't think they'll finish above Tottenham, to be honest with you. I still fancy Tottenham for fourth.
Yeah.
I really do.
Okay. not a brilliant note to end it on for Liverpool fans. There's obviously work to do there. But the Mirror Football podcast is back next week. We'll see you then.